Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and we are just so excited to be here. Happy New Year's, right? Because this is the first show of the year, so Happy New Year's. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. As usual, there's been a ton going on, so we have a lot to talk about today.
Definitely, and I cannot wait to get into that because especially some of the things that I've heard about, 2024 and what to expect. But I definitely want to make sure that we have our disclaimer up and make sure that we get that going before we jump into the conversations. Just to be mindful that this podcast is provided for community building and educational purposes, right? So we're not here to provide telling you who to vote for. We're not here to be very partisan. We're just providing facts and giving you an opportunity to ask us questions and learn a lot about how to be an advocate, HR advocacy pro, and definitely with our advocate pro, Chris Schrader. So let's kind of start talking about what's going on, right? Because it's 2024. I've heard people say that not to expect anything this year because it's a presidential year, election year, as well. It's a gubernatorial year.
Yeah. We got in Indiana especially. It's a big election year, right? We have a senator up, and that's a vacant seat because Mike Braun, who's the current senator, is running for the governor's seat. And then we have a seat that's going to be open in Indiana 3, Jim Banks, because Jim Banks is running for Braun's Senate seat, along with a bunch of other people. You've seen their commercials on TV. Right. And so it's crowded fields for all those seats. And then, of course, every congressional seat is up. So, yeah, they're big. 2024 is a really big decision year in Indiana, to be certain. But yeah, the things I want to talk about today, we can kind of stay in this vein because I want to talk about the Iowa caucuses coming up.
Okay.
And then the next thing I want to talk about is earlier today, this just happened today, the Department of Labor published its long anticipated rule on independent contractors. And so I want to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about the Indiana General Assembly, which has just kicked off. This is our quote unquote short session. So we're already nearly a quarter way through it. All right, because it ends in early March. And so this is just a short session. So first, let's go ahead and talk about the election coming up, right? And this is the Iowa caucuses. So the Iowa caucuses, they've held this position now for decades, literally decades, where Iowa is always where everything starts, right? This is where it kicks off. And
so interesting.
And they're referred to as caucuses because caucuses work very different than straight up primary votes. As a matter of fact, Iowa is one of the few remaining states that does caucuses. Texas does a different version of one. I won't even go there. They do a different version of it, which is pretty interesting. If you watch the way Texas does it, it's bananas. I really enjoy it. But the way it happens in Iowa is that the caucuses are hosted in people's houses. These are literally houses. So people will go to neighbors' houses and things like that. And they will then have a conversation around all the candidates, what they learned from them, who they saw. And Iowa is a retail event, right? So the representatives show up there. They go to county fairs. This all started back in the summer.
What?
So and Haley. Now Trump hasn't been there. I think he's been there once. I think he did one of the shows. I mean, because that's usually what he does. It's his campaign style is to do large events. It worked for him last time, so I'm unsurprised to see him stick with that formula. But it's very, very retail. People in Iowa are used to this, so they're very comfortable going up to candidates and putting hard questions to them and things like that. And they take this responsibility of vetting candidates for the rest of the nation super seriously. Like it's a civic duty of an Iowan, to do this. And New Hampshire people feel the same way.
Really, how does Indiana become that?
Candidates in their kitchen and just sit down and talk to them. because they feel like they have the weight, the weight of
Well,
the nation.
yeah. How does Indiana, get,
Oh, we're
is
way
that
late
some?
in the game. Oh, it's a
Oh,
game.
okay.
The game's almost always over. Yeah, we're
Okay.
we're in
Okay.
April, and usually the game's over by then. Now, it wasn't last time. Last time it wasn't, and this was Indiana was Ted Cruz's last stand. Remember, he was the last man standing against Donald Trump, and Trump took Indiana, and that was the last nail in Cruz's coffin for that campaign. So it did.
Oh,
The Republican campaign went pretty deep, right?
okay. And
Pretty
I remember
deep.
that year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Democrat one went pretty deep because of Bernie Sanders, right? So
Yes.
the last election, the things went way deep into the process without a clear winner being picked. But at any rate, so this caucus thing. So you meet in the living room, you have these conversations, you talk, and then everybody votes. And so literally, you write the name down on a slip of paper, right? And
Oh, okay.
those get passed, and then they're read out, and you go through one through all the others. And then depending upon how crowded the field is, this one isn't particularly crowded, right? You've got 5 Republicans in, right? So this will be pretty quick. So you drop off the lowest one, and then you revote, and then you drop off the lowest one and you revote.
Like the delegates at the state convention. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
kind of like that. Yeah. And but you're drinking coffee, and so then somebody's living room.
Yeah.
So then and then they finally get down to the one, the one who wins, and then they report that out. Right. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
not,
So then that's what okay.
yeah. And
Okay.
so they're literally like calling a phone number. I mean, they used to call phone numbers, and now they actually tally and things like that. I mean, it's a lot more orderly now in that sense, but that's how that works.
Okay.
And so to give you an idea of where that sits right now, DeSantis was in second place to Trump. So first of all, nobody is close to Donald Trump in any poll, in any primary coming up, nothing. Nobody's close. So he stands at 52% in Iowa, and he's gone up.
Oh, wow.
And where he has had his biggest gain in 2 demographics. First-time caucus goers. So these are people going to caucus for the first time. Because it's not like everybody in Iowa goes to the caucuses. That's not true. That's never been true, right? So first-time caucus goers.
Okay.
He has made huge leap in them, and evangelical Christians have gone for him super hard.
Okay.
And he's now got a clear majority of them, and he did not last time around. Ted Cruz actually won the evangelicals in Iowa last time around. Now Trump has a solid majority of them. So DeSantis has now slipped a little bit where he's tied with Nikki Haley.
Okay.
So the feeling here is that, first of all, Trump's going to win. That's just going to happen. The real question is what happens between DeSantis and Haley. The conventional wisdom is that Haley can survive coming in third in Iowa, and DeSantis can't. Simply because of money.
Oh, because more money if he's lagging behind, then more money to throw in. Okay.
Yeah, so DeSantis's largest private contributor left him. I think it was a month and a half ago, and went over to Trump. So
it went over to Trump.
Yeah.
Oh,
So DeSantis, money tends to go to winners, right? I mean, just in any endeavor.
Oh, okay. Well, it's like you knew the question I was going to ask, because I was going to say,
I did know
why? It's just because,
money
the winner.
Money tends to go to the winners, and so the conventional wisdom is if DeSantis can't come in, a solid second in Iowa, he won't have the money to get through New Hampshire. Certainly not anything beyond New Hampshire. Whereas Haley, if Haley comes in second, well, that's a win for her, and she's already in second in New Hampshire, so she's much stronger on the East Coast, whereas DeSantis is much stronger in the South. The problem for DeSantis is the Super Tuesday states, which are dominantly in the South, don't happen until March. So the question is, can he have enough oxygen, meaning money? Can he make it to the southern states in the spring? Because if he just can't make it, then he's out, right? And monetarily. Now, he has said that he's in it to the end and all these other things because, of course, you have to.
Of course, you can't say.
Somebody said, "Hey, just so you know, I plan on bagging in 30 days, but
yeah,
please give me more money." Nobody ever, he has to say that. Everybody says it. Everybody says that.
Yeah.
But Trump is just killing it everywhere, and nobody's close. Nobody's close.
I mean, because I did see his numbers before, and I haven't been tracking it, but it just seems like nobody's.
They're staggering.
So far away. Right. Are they still in the 1 digits, or did they at least climb up to the 2 digits?
Oh, no, nobody's within 20 points.
Okay. See, yeah.
No, nobody's within 20 points.
So vice president, or maybe I'm moving too quickly.
Okay.
But who would he choose then at this point?
Well, that's kind of hard to tell.
Okay.
Because Trump, he plays politics different than anybody else. And so that's one of the reasons why people are always flummoxed, and DC never knew what to make of him, and still don't. But when Trump is a natural fighter, and so if you're his opponent and you're in front of him, he's going to do everything he can to annihilate you. We know the drill, right? He'll run you down. He'll call you names. I mean, all that stuff. And then once you're not his opponent anymore, he'll probably have you over for dinner. But if you're lined up aside from him, he's just going to do what he believes it takes to win.
And that makes But that's what it seemed like happened when he was running for the first time, right? It just seemed like everybody was against him. But then once they saw that he was the winner, then all of a sudden, everyone became friends.
Well, okay. So yes. And this is where he doesn't really fit so easily, right? Because normally what happens in both parties, you tend not to turn vicious guns on a person who, but for the election, would probably be your colleague, right?
Yes.
And you do have to be mindful of the fact that, yes, somebody's going to have to run on the ticket, right? And that's why, quite frankly, everybody was really, a lot of people were super surprised when Kamala Harris was named vice president candidate.
Yes, that's the one.
Biden, because she had shivved him in the I mean, badly.
Yes.
And in a way that everybody was on the D side was a little horrified at. Now he went ahead and did that. There were political calculations involved or whatnot.
Of course.
But that was a real, kind of swallow and take your medicine kind of moment, for the Biden campaign. And the Republicans have always been more genteel about the opposition until Trump. And of course he comes in and he's a wrecking ball, and so that's what he does. And I don't mean that. That's my observation. That's not.
No. I know what you mean.
I'm not indicating I don't like that or do like that. I want to make that very clear. I'm just saying that's how he goes.
Because he's not traditional, so he totally
no. That's correct. That's how he goes.
Yes, that's how he goes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard to see, and I don't think anybody out there is playing for vice president. Everybody's playing to win, but it's kind of hard for me to see who in this group of candidates that he would pick that either A, he would want, or B, they would want to be in his administration. Right.
Because it is kind of okay. So I mean, I guess something will turn up. I'm pretty sure.
So something will happen, and there's a whole lot out there, right? I mean, he's still got pending court cases, although some of these cases have been postponed now. So we'll see what, if any, effect those have on the election. But nonetheless, barring something just totally nuts, I would see Trump winning Iowa quite handily, and I'd see him winning New Hampshire quite handily. And part of the reasons for this, I think, is that he is a known commodity.
Mm-hmm.
He ran in the last election. He ran an
Mm-hmm.
election before that. I mean, this is his third time running when you think about it.
Oh yeah, okay, because he ran
Right?
what
'Cause
in the
he ran in the
80s or
primary, then he was elected, then he ran
oh
again and was
okay.
not elected, and so now he's running again. So he's
Okay,
been
okay,
in
okay.
front of the American people for quite some time here now, for many years in a row, and
Okay.
he's a known commodity. I don't think I'm not even clear how somebody could kind of be on the fence about this dude. You know, either you're for him or you're not. You're
Yeah,
not.
because
And
honestly, yeah, I don't think there's really any gray area with.
and when you look at Iowa, the numbers there pretty much mirror the national numbers.
Okay, so then that's what Iowa caucuses represent. So it's
No,
supposed to.
Iowa caucuses represent Iowa. All I'm
Okay.
saying is that right now there is a corollary
Okay.
between Trump's
Okay.
popularity in the Republican Party nationwide, just the
Uh-huh.
Republican Party nationwide. There is a corollary between that and Iowa. That's all I'm
Hmm.
saying. That's all I'm saying. Sometimes the
Interesting.
corollaries are off. Sometimes the person is far more popular in Iowa than they are anyplace else. In the Democrat
Okay.
primary last year, Pete Buttigieg, very popular in Iowa, not so popular in South Carolina. Right.
Okay.
So you
Okay.
see what I'm
Okay.
saying? And so
Okay.
it's, first of all, the saying is true. It's absolutely true. All politics are local. That's true. But I was merely making the point that Trump's, whereas the other candidates kind
Mm-hmm.
of go up and down in terms of popularity, state by state by state, Trump is the only one that maintains like this 52% everywhere. That's why I have a hard time
Mm.
seeing him get beat.
Wow.
Because
So then
if the other people just change spots in second or third or fourth or
yeah, they're not
whatever,
moving
it's
in the
cut
right
and ball.
direction.
No,
Yeah.
if you're losing by 25 points or some version of that, keep in
Yeah.
mind how big 25-point advantage is. A 5% difference in a nationwide vote is considered a blowout. So just think
Oh.
about that for a minute,
A
right?
5% difference is
Nationwide
considered a
is
blowout.
considered a blowout.
Nationwide.
Nationwide is
Well,
considered
nationwide because more numbers.
a
Yes.
blowout.
Yes.
Yeah, but still,
Yes.
just try. I mean, there's a big
Yeah.
percentage difference between those two. So more to come. We'll see what happens. But those primaries are next week on the 15th. So
Okay.
we'll see. I'm
Now,
not going
is
to
it
be
like
up. I'm not going to be up watching it and popping popcorn because I think I already know the outcome. But we'll see.
so, so then when you think about HR then, HR advocacy, like, why is knowing this, would you say,
Okay.
good?
Yeah. So because what is said on the campaign trail oftentimes pulls through into policy later on, right?
Okay.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that's commonly said about politicians is, they'll say anything you get elected, and they'll say anything, and it doesn't mean they'll actually do it and stuff like that. And there are some politicians who do that. They're fewer and far between than people think. But when it comes to campaigns, the positions they take, what they're sticking to, what they're doing, that can't change very much, right? Because you'll just
Mm-hmm.
be massacred. You go into another state, and hey, wait a minute, you were saying
Yeah,
this,
you
and
just said
now
yes.
you're saying this. I mean, kind of what do you mean? And so Trump being Trump, he's been super declarative, right, about what he's going to do, like on day one and stuff like that. And usually nobody says, what I'm going to do on day one. I would think that if I were elected and coming into a new building for the first time, what I'd do on day one is, where's the kitchen and where's the bathroom, right? I don't think I'm going to jump out and make major policy on day one.
Yes.
But President Trump speaks in those terms,
Yes.
right? He's done that. He's done that before. And so he's doing it again. And there's no difference. So anyway,
Okay.
that's Iowa. So now I
Okay.
want to switch gears and go to what happened today.
Yes.
And that was the publishing of the final rule
Okay.
for independent contractor, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this has to do with an interpretation it's a classification determination, right? As to
Uh-huh.
whether or not a person is an employee or an independent contractor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for years and years and years, we had these vague rules, and let me pull it.
Okay. You're gonna
Okay.
share?
I'm going to
Yeah,
pull
you
it up
can.
here. Well, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can share it, but I'm going to
Oh, okay. Okay.
pull it up here. Yeah, because there's just a piece of it that I want
Okay.
to
No, no,
talk
no,
about, which
no,
is
no, that's
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, which has to do with the actual uh, rules and the interpretations that we're going to have to give, and of course
Okay.
the challenge that comes with that because of the because of what they've done, because
Uh-huh.
of what they've done with the rule. So let's see here.
Because it is interesting. I am looking forward to really unpacking this because I guess before this new before the final rule, I always
Yeah,
kind of look towards the super shuttle example that SHRM provided in their response to
yeah.
the DOL when they said we don't need to do anything.
Well, right,
We
and, that,
already
and
have.
well, because we went through rule making in the prior administration that took the better part the better part of 2 years, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it it what we basically had was the rule that had come out was done to be reflective of. So this is the one that's been overturned now. So the rule that we had was designed primarily to try to get some understanding around what are called gig workers. Right.
Yes.
So I think you've heard the term gig economy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say Uber is a real good example. I'll use Uber and I'll use Lyft because they've been around for a long time and everybody knows what they are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole underpinning of both of those applications, if you will, is that they act as a middleman. All right.
Okay.
So you want to ride somewhere. Okay. You want to go from where you are to someplace else, and you need
Mm-hmm.
somebody to give you a ride. So what these services do are allow you to say, I want to go from here to there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will then say, they will then connect with somebody who has their own vehicle and is out on their own fuel at their
That's
own
right.
time and say, hey, there's a person near you that needs a ride from here to there. Do you want it? And then a price is agreed upon between the
Mm-hmm.
driver. And then that is sent to you and say it's going to be, $12 or whatever it is. Do you want it?
Huh.
And you go
Okay.
boom and you say accept, and then somebody drives up in their car and you get a
Mm-hmm.
notice that says it's a black Corolla or something.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Tells you the driver's license. Both services typically show you a picture of the driver so that you
Mm-hmm.
know whose car you're getting in and stuff like that. So Uber and Lyft do not employ the driver because you're the one paying for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They don't employ the driver. They do not pay the driver. You pay the driver. They just act as
Mm-hmm.
a cash register. Right.
Okay.
So it goes boom to Uber. They collect their percentage and boom, it lands right on that person's bank account, probably by the time the ride is done.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Okay. So the question is in that arrangement, you ask an HR professional, is that person driving the car your employee? And you're going to say, well, no,
Mm-hmm.
because I paid them for an occasional service. I don't control the vehicle they drive. I don't direct them how to drive it. I have no managerial authority.
Mm-hmm.
I have no ownership. So no, that person can't be my employee.
Mm-hmm.
Then you ask yourself, okay, well, is it Uber's employee? Can Uber tell them what car to drive? No. Can they tell them how to drive?
Mm-hmm.
No. Can they tell them how they have to get from one spot to the other? No.
No.
No. Can they make that person have? I think they can now. I think they do make them have auto insurance. I didn't used to.
Okay. And that doesn't, that wouldn't be,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
can can Uber require them to take the money, require them to accept the money for the ride hail, right? So you say, I want the ride, and Uber says, okay, this is a, we're saying the market says this is a $25 ride. Can they make the driver take that? The answer is no, they can't.
No, they can't. Yeah.
Can they make the driver even work? No. If you want to sit on your couch and watch TV that night and never activate the Uber app, you won't take anybody anywhere because they can't make you.
That's right.
So is that person the employee of Uber? Okay.
No.
So in the state of California, they actually are. So you got to think like a Californian here. So in California, they said Uber is the employer.
Really? So
yeah, really. So different states look at this differently, right? Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that people knew the rule needed to change. And this goes all the way back to the Obama administration. As a matter of fact, the rule change effort actually began in the Obama administration.
Okay.
And it was picked up by the Trump administration and policy.
Yes.
Okay. And even within the Obama administration, they knew the answer to that question is not easy. Right? Because you got a middle person who's just asking as a conduit. They're connecting the person who wants the service with the person who's willing to provide it. And they're taking a piece of the action for doing it. Does that make them an employer?
No, I mean, I can't even see them taking on benefits and
no, because again, benefits only go to an employee. Now, the reason I bring this up, is because I had the opportunity to, while I was in DC, the Secretary of Labor, back then it was Tom Perez, and he came and spoke to the SHRM conference I was at. Legal and legislative. And so he stayed and answered questions. And I really appreciated that because he didn't have to do that. He could have ducked and run. Instead, he stood there and took questions for a solid half hour. And so I was called on. And so I asked him specifically, do you actually believe there's any such thing as an independent contractor? And his answer to that was no. He believed to his core that everybody was an employee of somebody else. Period. End of story. If you get paid by somebody, you're their employer.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Again, your opinion.
Yeah.
His opinion was different. Okay.
Yes.
So this is what I mean about opinions influencing policy. So the Obama administration never actually got the policy out of the door, largely because the people writing the policy couldn't close the gap, because people in the Department of Labor who did not take the position that the Secretary of Labor did, but he was the Secretary of Labor, so who wins?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but at any rate, they never got it out the door. And then the Trump administration came out and polished it off and published a very simple, easy to understand rule, making it pretty darn clear that independent contractors are exactly that, independent. Now, the unions went bonkers because they would love nothing better than to unionize Uber and Lyft and all the others, just like they unionize.
That's true. Yes, right? yes.
Well, can a union organize independent people? And the answer is you can't, because they're independent. They'll tell you go hang, because a union is a collective.
Yes.
And independents are the opposite of collectives, right?
That's right. Yes.
And so they saw a whole lot of organizing opportunity going away. So they were super angry. So then the Biden administration came in and brought in mostly the prior administration's Department of Labor people. They got a different Department of Labor had. Well, they had one, Marty Walsh, and then he left. And now they can't get in the one that they wanted, because she couldn't clear the Senate confirmation vote. So he's got to propose somebody else. But I digress.
Okay.
But under Marty Walsh, the rule came out. And when I saw the rule as was proposed, I was like, that's the old rule. That's the one that existed before anything was done to change it for the gig economy. And sure enough, that's what they've done. So we've just gone back. To the old rule, which is a six factor test, with no one portion of the test outweighing the other. Meaning it's up to the government to, if they come in and look, to decide what they think is important in terms of totality. So it's not easy. So for someone like me, I paid close attention to this because I'm an independent contractor, right? I have
as myself. Yes.
Yeah, you are too. And so, this goes right to my livelihood. And so I pay attention to that test. And I got to tell you, the engagement I'm in right now as a fractional executive for a company, that I was definitely an independent contractor under the old rule. No doubt about it. Just absolutely no doubt about it. But under this rule, that's a little gray.
Is it? So under the new rule, it oh goodness gracious, because we know that fractional is the new thing right now. And that's, you're not an employee in that position. So.
No, you aren't, because you can't be, but you have authority.
Yes.
Right. So I'm the head of HR for this company. I advise the executive team just as I do as a consultant, but I work with frontline managers and people too, because of the scope of this assignment. That's what I do. But I'm not an employee. I invoice them. I'm not eligible for their benefits or any of those other things. And there's a duration to my assignment. It will end. So there are components of the assignment that scream independent contractor, and there are others that are not as clear. See what I mean? So, so under the old rule, under the rule they did away with, because under the rule that was passed by the Trump administration, they did away with that one. So under the rule that was passed then, I would have been fine. Under this new rule, which is the way old rule. So anybody's been in HR for more than 15 years, the easiest thing to think here is just act like nothing changed. Under the Trump administration, and there you go. It's just like we used to do it. So that came out. It is not kind at all to gig workers, and as we all know now, that is increasingly the kind of work that people are willing and want to do. As a matter of fact, my son is freelancing all over the place.
Yes,
all over the place. So. He's he's got an assignment right now where, again, that's a little bit murky. Is he an employee? No. Is he on their rent? No. Can they tell him how to work? No, they can't. They can tell him what to work on. Hey,
yes, but not
for us. But they can't tell him how. They can let him know if, when he gets it back to him, that's acceptable. And his payment rests on that. But
interesting,
so, but under this 6-factor analysis thing, he's a freelancer and he's doing it. He could do it for other companies, but right now he's only doing it for one. Well, on the old test, that would get kind of side-eyed.
Yeah, that would put you as an employee, right?
Except that, again, they can't manage him. They can't direct him. They could just send work to him, and either it's acceptable to him or not. He's never been at that location ever. He only uses his equipment. So again, it's not clear. Under the old rule, under the rule that was passed in the Trump administration, this would have been crystal clear. He'd have been an independent contractor, and that'd be that. But
but I guess, Chris, what's interesting to me, because it just seems like it would be between the independent contractor and the business who's looking for help. It would.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay. So I guess one of the best ways to think about this is the new rules, which were the old rules. The old rules predated the internet. So that to me is a big miss in all of this. Big miss in all of this. But it is designed, the purpose of this, the intent of this is to have employers hire independent contractors. So if you're using independent contractor a lot and you want them, then it's designed to say, okay, the legally safest thing to do is hire you and make you an employee. But that, of course, requires the independent contractor to want to do that.
Yes. Exactly.
But the company may say, hey, look, you either coming on as an employer, we can't use anymore the way we're using you because it's legally, we create legal exposure.
That's why it's just really interesting that this became an issue. Like, I can only see this being an issue if maybe an independent contractor maybe should have been, categorized as an employee, may have
And
complained,
and it did. So I'm not going to
okay,
say there weren't violations of the old rule. There were. As a matter of fact, Microsoft 20 odd years ago blatantly violated that rule. They were calling people independent contractors that they assigned them desks, they gave them their equipment, they were managed, they got performance evaluations. I mean,
I even went through a process where, they said I was an independent contractor, but they wanted to control everything that I was doing. And I just said, am I an independent contractor or an employee? Because you can't tell me what to do. But that caused me to really dig in and research.
Right. And it's the nature of how your agreements are drafted.
Yeah.
And I'm very clear in my contracts, what are my responsibilities and what are your responsibilities. Here's your water's edge. This is how much you can make me do.
Yes, but I had to learn this. I really had to kind of go through this process and look it up and then understand, like, oh, it's really me who needs to. What does that? Any changes now then for age? Like, is there anything?
It just makes it. It makes it harder to do because there are no bright lines. There are just 6 murky ones. So we're just right back to where we were in the 2010s, right? And
everybody hates the IC. This IC conversation.
So anyway, let's we can go ahead and close the book on that one. So again, that just was pushed out today. So you can go to SHRM.org. You can find it there. It's in all the news.
Okay.
All the news has it. My phone started buzzing immediately when it dropped, right? Because all the news organizations were picking it up, and I got an email from SHRM, so.
Oh, okay.
But anybody can find it. Anybody can find it.
Okay.
So I do want to talk now. Let's shift gears and move over to the Indiana General Assembly, right?
Yes.
So the Indiana General Assembly is now in what is referred to as the short session. And so the bulk of what's going to happen is really going to happen here in January and February, because they only have a little bit of March to work with, right?
Yes, just a little bit of March.
Yeah, just a little bit of March. And so the reason this is called the the short session is its moniker, right? Because the budget session is longer, right? It goes all the way through April, January, all the way through April. So under the Indiana Constitution, the legislature is supposed to meet every other year, do the budget and go home. So they're not supposed to meet every year. They're supposed to meet every other year for like 90 days and then go home. Well,
that blows my mind.
100 days. Yeah. Well, you look at a lot of states have permanent legislatures. Right? Pennsylvania, New York, California, permanent legislatures. They just never go home. So Indiana was never designed for that. Indiana was designed that you show up once every other year, do the budget, and go home. There, however, was placed in the Constitution a way for a governor to bring the legislature back in a non-standard year, right? Every other year. But that rested in the emergency powers of the governor. So the governor would have to declare an emergency. That's the first step. And then the second thing would be to call back the legislature. You may have heard this referred to. Remember when COVID came out and a lot of the legislature said, hey, listen, stop doing all these executive orders and stuff. This has gone on long enough. You need the legislature to weigh in. Yes. And Governor Holcomb wouldn't do it. And they couldn't make him because he could do it. He was the only one who could do it by declaring an emergency. And he didn't declare that kind of emergency, right? So he really skirted. Governor Holcomb really skirted the whole emergency thing. And it really ticked off the legislators because they really called back. The governor had a different opinion. Okay. So, but that provision is there in the Constitution. Up until I think it was 1959, 1958, 1959, somewhere in there, in the entire history of the state, from its founding until like 1958, never had any governor of Indiana called the legislature in for an emergency session. And that includes the Civil War, which apparently was not enough of an emergency to call a session. Okay,
What?
think about that. The Civil War didn't rate high enough to declare an emergency, a war. Okay, I'm just to put it in
yes,
perspective.
yes.
All I'm trying to do is put it in perspective. Starting in 1959, however, Indiana has been in a state of perpetual emergency. So they've brought the legislature back in the odd years. And the main reason they started doing that was they couldn't get there was just simply no way to get all the work done that needed to get done in the period of time established by the Constitution. And so rather than go through the whole hoo-ha of a constitutional amendment to lengthen the session.
Oh, okay.
They just said, look, the emergency powers are there. The governor signs a document. It's the emergency legislature thing. He does this, and this is so mundane that it's never reported. It's just what we do. It's just what we do. But in fact,
and that's what's interesting.
The governor's invoking emergency authority. Okay, so be it as it may. So
no, and what's because I guess that was going to be the question.
But because it's an emergency, it's for a fixed period of time. So that's why it's shorter. Okay.
Okay.
So the emergency also defines how long the legislature can be there. So this has become known as the short session.
So is, I mean, are we, I know that we're not trying to do an amendment to make it a permanent, because that's not what we want. We don't want to go through that whole process.
Well,
but
again, that's opinion. That's opinion. I don't, there's not an appetite in the electorate of the state to do that. I think that's fair to say that. There's nobody pounding on the table for that to happen. So
now, could it go back? Could it ever reverse? I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but could
not now.
No. Okay.
No, the government is too big and too complex.
Okay. Okay.
Down to. It's the government is too big and too complex. And so when you look at what goes on in a short session, what goes on in a short session?
Yes. What goes
on? One
of
the things you're going to notice when you look at the bills that are put into the hopper, a fair number of them are going to have in their title technical corrections. Okay. Technical corrections.
I did see a bill that said technical corrections.
Sure you did, yeah. And so when you read these bills, they're super tedious, because it basically reads, it basically says, okay, IC 7.4.1 section G line 5. Okay, so it's Indiana.
Oh my God. So it's that sort of.
So that's how it starts, right? That's how it goes. And then it says the word "and" in sentence 3 is replaced by the word a, right? A. And so the bills will just read like that, right? Now, the reason that is happening is because after all the legislation is passed in the session, sessions can sometimes be chaotic, like the last one was. They went right until like 3 a.m. on the last day to pass the budget. I mean, they went right to the edge last time. Things can get kind of loose, okay? And so after everything is passed, then the legal arm of the legislature starts poring over all of the bills that were passed. And then they make technical corrections, which are usually grammar.
Okay. And
make sure that the law says what it's supposed to say.
Now, do we ever go in and purge?
No.
Okay, so when we're doing so with the technical corrections, we're correcting, but we're not purging.
Law gets piled upon law, piled upon. I mean, it's a running joke, right? I mean, for instance, to this very day, it's against the law.
The horse thing.
Yeah, it's against the law to tie your horse to a post in front of the state capitol. Yeah, there's all kinds of laws
that
on
that's still a
horses. The reason
huh.
being is that as people move past things, it's more complicated and takes more time to undo it. And keep in mind,
Okay.
very rarely does a law stand by itself in a vacuum. Oftentimes, there are all kinds of different other components of the law that also rest upon that one.
Okay.
And so to try to nuke it, you might be unhooking like 6 things you didn't want to unhook. Right. So
and that because
so
things
the
are
law
connected.
they get piled up, and so the Indiana code, is like a tome, right? It just So, but no, you'd like in a perfect world you do it, but it would take time and effort. And again, who would put in that time and effort in a set amount of time to get stuff done? You got to get done, right? You just So the other thing that happens is a short session. There are bills offered every single time, bills that look very, very similar to the bills that are offered in the long session, right? There's always a bill to increase the minimum wage, always is, by different numbers and different amounts and in different effects over the course of time. Generally speaking, you see less of that activity in a short session because the short session is not a budget session. So there's no money. And most things passed need money. Okay. Most things passed need money. And so they tend to get reconciled within the scope of the budget. But that doesn't mean that there aren't crazy bills that can pass, and stuff like that. That stuff can happen, which is, of course, why I watch them, on behalf of the Indiana, IndySHRM, to see if there's anything there that might cause us some trouble or conversely, some stuff we could get behind. But this is rarely a session of drama. Now, sometimes, well, I'd say more often than not, actually. It's not sometimes. More often than not, you will get a bill where people are trying to test the waters, run it up the pole and see who salutes kind of thing. So sometimes you'll get a bill that's a foreshadowing of what's going to come up in the next session. They're kind of testing their strength, seeing what the opposition will be, stuff like that. So that happens in a short session. But oftentimes those bills don't get heard. Or if they get heard, they don't get voted on in committee, right?
Okay.
So let's talk about this process, right? So
yes, let's talk about the process.
All legislators get to write bills, and
all legislators get
to write bills, because they all want to be able to say, "Hey, I wrote a piece of legislation." If somebody at home says, "Hey, this is my neighbor's fence is too high, I can't see. Can you pass a state law to say the fences can only be this high or whatever?" I'm kind of joking, but just barely.
But you're not barely, because I've read some of them and I'm just like, wait, what? What is this bill going to be about? I don't understand. But
you wouldn't believe the number of bills get written because of the next door neighbor, honest to God. So anyway, but everybody is allowed to write bills, and the leadership of each house sets the ceiling on how many bills you can write. Right. So how many bills you get forward. So it's typically in the House, you'll see 5. In the Senate, they have a standard of no more than 2 per day.
That's what it says. Okay.
Yeah, for the first 6 days.
The House is 5?
I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Well, that makes sense.
More members in the House. There's a lot more members in the House than there are in the Senate. You got to remember.
That's right. Because that list is so long. Oh my gosh, I didn't.
Right. Well, I mean, when you look at how many people are in the House and you do it times 5, I mean, thank goodness most of them don't write that many. But anyway, be it as it may, they're allowed to do that.
Okay.
There are deadlines involved. So the deadline for getting the Senate bills into the hopper, meaning a bill has been written, it's been presented. That's what, when I say in the hopper, I mean the speaker has it, or the Senate pro tem has it. Their office has it, right? Okay, that's called the hopper. So There are deadlines. So the deadline for the Senate bills was yesterday, and the deadline for the House bills is going to be Friday, I believe. No more new bills after that. So
Okay.
everything's got to be in by then. Nothing new. Okay. Now, the reason I say that is if anybody went out and looked on the Indiana General Assembly website and looked at the bills, you could see the same thing you and I look at, right? It just and you will see a whole bunch of bills that say vehicle bill.
Yes.
Okay? Those have nothing to do with automobiles or auto or anything like that. It's not vehicle in the sense that you think about it in the vernacular. You have to think about what it means legislatively. And so from a legislative standpoint, every bill is a vehicle. You have to have a vehicle for the language. So the language of the bill, right? That's the contents, but the bill itself is the vehicle. So you have to have a vehicle to move through the process.
Yes.
The leadership holds on to these vehicles because if for some reason a bill falters, sometimes bills get combined, pieces of it die, but there's a big appetite to get some component of it through. Then you can go to the leadership and say, hey, it's late in the session. Can we please have these vehicle bills to put our language in and get it passed? So the vehicle bills are like, think about it as spare ammo. But the leadership controls it.
Controls how that works. So
who gets one?
Yeah, who gets it? And so it really looks like a lot of relationship building has to be there, so that the leadership will
you got to support leadership on it. Yeah.
So then after the bills have been assigned to committees,
Sorry, I digress. I was just saying what the vehicle bills meant.
Yeah.
Okay, so once the deadline has passed for the bills to be in, now they have to go to committee assignment.
Okay.
So all these bills are going to be read, and there's a unit in the legislature. They're not elected legislators that do this. They're usually lawyers. There's a designated unit that reads those, and think about it like dealing the cards. Right? Dealing cards. And they look at the bills, they read the contents of them, and then they route them to a standing committee. So for instance, almost any bill dealing with the workplace, as we as HR professionals think about it, those bills should be assigned to, if they are a House bill, they should be assigned to the House Pension, Labor, and Benefits Committee.
Okay.
If they are in the Senate, then it's going to go to Labor and Pensions. Okay, that's the analogous committee in the Senate. That's where those should go. Now, occasionally, the people reading them get confused because there's a lot, and they're under the gun, right? Because usually the committees, remember, the committee assignments have a due date for that too. So that due date is 3 days after the deadlines for the bills. All the committee assignments have to be made. And sometimes there's chicanery that goes on with the committee assignments, right? About, well, hey, if we route this bill to this committee, then this committee chair said he'll pass it out. That happened to me. That happened to me a few years ago. The governor's office persuaded a favorable committee assignment that should not have happened, but it did. But in the main, they get assigned to the right place. There's no guarantee that's going to happen, and occasionally mistakes are made. So
I just want to make sure that I understand that you said that sometimes, where it goes, sometimes there's a little bit of a persuasion that's part of the process.
Can be. Well, I remember absolutely vividly, a bill on pregnancy accommodation should have gone to Senate Labor and Pensions. The governor knew that committee chairman said, well, you can send that bill to my committee, but I'm not hearing it, and there will be no vote. So the governor's office leaned, and the bill got sent to a committee it could get out of.
Okay. But that's good to know. Yeah.
That's not every day.
Yeah.
The far more mundane thing that happens is stuff gets assigned the right way.
Yes.
that 99% of the time it's done just pretty much like anybody just looking at it plain on its face would do it. Right.
And then you can easily make
It
that
belongs over here.
determination.
Now, the reason this is so important is because committee assignments tend to be for a long time. So these committee members ultimately over time become experts on what they're hearing. And so it's very important to get a bill routed to the right committee. Super important for me, because when I go and testify between the before those two committees, and I've done that, one of the great things about it is you don't really have to explain yourself a whole lot about what you're talking about.
Because
you can say DOL and they'll know. You can say Title VII and they will know. You can say terms and conditions of employment and they will know. So you don't have to explain a whole lot. Whereas if you got in front of another committee, you may have to explain an awful lot. And that's happening too. So, and then the testimony becomes, you have a big education component just to frame it before you can make your argument. You got to frame it. Whereas before a committee that knows what it's doing, you can just launch it right into your position. Right. So.
Now, do you get questions when you how is the right way to say it?
No, that was the right way to say it. Yes.
Okay.
I'm frequently questioned after my testimony. Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So that's super cool. So it's like what we see on TV, right? Like that sort of
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You stand up and you make your statements.
Oh, so you're not sitting down? You're
standing. No. You stand up. You're in the State House, right? So no.
Okay.
You go and, yeah. There's some. Now I have done. There is some committee. It depends on the room you're in. It depends on the room you're in, the accommodations, stuff like that. But 99% of the time I stand. Sometimes seated. I've been before sometimes in some hearing rooms, they almost have you set up like a panel. And so if they'll have like two or three people sitting at a table, I'm one of them, and we'll just go, kind of bang, bang, bang in order. So it really depends on how the room is set up, but 90, it was all the time I'm standing up. And and then the legislator just started asking you questions. Yeah.
Okay. So then one more question, and then kind of what we can expect. What we think that we should maybe we'll talk about for the next.
We're running out of time here. Yeah.
So the vehicle bill, though, I guess so after bills have been assigned to committees, we will no longer see the vehicle bills on the website.
No, you'll still see the vehicle bills. The vehicle bills.
We could still see
it. That's the dry powder. See, they're used after the process starts. Remember, I told you there's 9 million ways for a bill to die. It's easier for a bill. The easiest thing to happen is for a bill to die. The hardest thing for a bill to do is pass. That's hard. Dying is easy. Passing through the whole process is hard, and that can get cantankerous, and sometimes bills can die even if there are a lot of people that liked part of that bill. And that is when you would go grab a vehicle bill, slap your language on it, and now you're off and running again.
Okay, so then it's still available up until like the last day, March.
In the hopper. Yeah, if you notice the vehicle bills, they're all authored by the Senate Pro Tem.
That's right.
And so that's their bill. That's what I meant about you got to go to them because that's their bill.
Oh, okay. So I can definitely see how that can like really draw. Towards the end, if someone feels...
because it's a scarcity, right? There's so many to go around. So that's another way to exert, power, right?
So then this is really.
And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it per se. The Constitution permits that. So
no, I don't. I think that once we understand, we realize.
So to say what we'll talk about next time. Next time we will have an idea of what bills are still alive and what bills are dead. We can talk about some of the bills that are important to HR and where they are and where, I think they'll possibly land. And by then it'll probably be right in front of the New Hampshire primary. So we can talk about that again.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Department of Labor doesn't roll out the next rule that is equally broadly anticipated. And this is the one that sets the salary floor. Okay. So
Okay.
we're waiting for that final rule. That final rule has not been published yet, but that's a big one, right? Because that if they jack up that salary floor, that affects
we're talking about you're talking about that the white collar.
The salary floor for meeting the exemption test.
Yeah, the EAP or the executive administrator professional.
Oh yeah, well that's one of them. You're talking about the it's commonly referred to as the white. The white,
the white collar, the white collar
exemption.
EAP, yeah.
Yes, I am talking about the exemption test.
Okay.
I am sorry, jumped ahead there. Yes, I am talking about the exemption test, and a major component of the exemption test is, does the salary meet the floor required? So if you jack the floor up, well, that means fewer people are going to be exempt, right? So
yeah, exactly. Okay, so then that's super cool. So it looks like the next time would be about like February 14, but we'll just kind of put it up.
Yeah. Is that Valentine's Day?
Yeah. So I guess what bills
we may want to rethink. Yeah.
What bills will be mine, or sort of, what bills do we love or something? I don't know. But,
okay. Yeah, we'll think of a theme. Okay. Well, great.
Cool.
So, Tracy, it's been great talking to you again. Thanks.
Yes. It's super cool talking to you, Chris, and just, helping us get prepared for being advocacy pros in HR this year, 2024.
Sure.
And I'm just going to add this to the stage. Actually, I'm going to make it bigger than us. And just say, thank you for joining. And, we always we're always looking for feedback, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to share information to make sure that, we're all feeling like we're being empowered and we're learning. And we won't know what you need unless you ask, right? So with that, I'll say thank you so much. And until next time, bye.
Thanks.